All right, welcome everyone to the latest episode of Kubernetes Outside. Yes, where we're going to go camping with Kubernetes and Cassandra. No, that's not what we're doing today. As we're rotating through the meeting times, this is the earliest of the times. I just want to throw out there that I was in an interesting on Pulsar mailing list. I was on an interesting discussion there about meeting times as well. And they're going through the same problems of they have a lot of Pulsar committers in Asia on the Apache Pulsar committers, lots of people in Asia, lots of people in Europe, and they have decided to do 2 meetings. And we went that route once before. I remember it was a bit of a mess, but I just want to let you know that I've been participating in the Pulsar process, and I want to see how if maybe there's a better way, just so we can include more people. But just wanted to throw that out there, and if there's any comment or discussion on that before we get going.
There's definitely value. Go ahead, Frank.
No, I was just saying that I did ask for 1 meeting, but I think it's good to have 2 now. For example, we can try, see if it can help. Why not? Can change things.
What the Pulsar folks are talking about, what they're going to do, I think, is they're going to do. I think they were thinking about doing bi-weekly, but 1 week would be more European friendly, like European East Coast friendly, and then the other would be more Asia friendly. So they bounce back and forth. So if you only went once a month in your time zone, you're fine. But it does go back and forth. I am concerned that we do have a lot of potential contributors and contribution stuff happening in Asia. So I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna find out exactly what the Pulsar group is doing and see if there's something we can emulate there. But I wanted to open that up.
See if they do any kind of minutes of the meeting. So because I know it's recorded, but I don't know who's gonna watch an hour's length of video. So maybe it's nice if we have some written stuff about what's being said or discussed or decided. I don't know. Or nothing is ever decided, is it?
Well, yeah, that was what I brought up. Was I hope that you're not making decisions in these meetings, because that's really definitely not an Apache way of doing things. But I mean, it's more discussion, update, that sort of thing. The decisions need to be made elsewhere, because you don't want to be that exclusive. If you can only get on a Zoom, then you're the only one making decisions. That seems horrible.
So this has nothing to do with what we really want to talk about, but the Apache way is you must do this stuff over email.
I think just in general in open source communities, it's better to be as inclusive about changes in projects, open source projects, in some way that more people can be included, like a mailing list or a PR or something like that.
Sure.
What we want to avoid is, it's always the same group of people on this meeting that we're like the star committee that makes all the decisions, and then they go downstream. I think that's just generally an open source type of thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. Never mind then. Where I was going with that isn't relevant. Like, I just don't think that email particularly is good anymore, but versus other mediums. So like compared to like what Kubernetes does, right? But I don't think they care all that much about email, but that's fine. They have a very open process, and you're right, to hop on a Zoom call, and it's not like there's no like elite. There are elite Kubernetes people, but they're just really active on GitHub.
Yeah, and they manage things through like GitHub issues, PRs, that sort of thing. But it's a place where everyone should have access. If you're going to contribute to a project, there's a minimum thing. Like, you should be able to get to the code. Okay, if you're having your discussion there, that should be perfectly fine.
For sure.
Okay, let's get the party started with a on our regular agenda, CAS operator update. Who would like to take that? Oh, I'm gonna have to ask for volunteers. I mean, volunteer somebody. I'm
I have
gonna.
I have an update.
Okay.
Eric Merkel and the Cassandra team has been working on new images. We now have images for running as non-root, which is pretty awesome. For 3.11 through 3.10, I believe. And then there is also a beta 4 image available, and that's also runs as a non-root container. We've been doing some testing in Cassandra with the beta 4. There's still some wrinkles to be ironed out, but that's in progress. But things is so far with the 3.11 non-root images, everything looks good so far from the testing we've been doing.
The important part about this rootless is it's rootless and has Medusa and Reaper functioning. So I think that was one of the hurdles that we hit, was not necessarily running Cassandra rootless, but running Cassandra with the other components. Oh, okay. Is that an accurate statement, John?
Yeah, sorry, I should have. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah.
Awesome. And then Jim, do you have any updates on I think there's a new version of Cas Operator that was released, but it seemed like that the changes there were focused on specific integration.
Yeah, I spoke to Chris. Wait, Patrick drop?
Patrick did drop.
Okay. All right. So anyway, I spoke to Chris, and I think we want to like kind of shore up, just make a kind of standard release process. We have a standard release like automation, but just standard release like cadence. So I suggested releasing at least every other month, like a minor version patch, and then patch releases can fill the gap. I mean, that sort of is like a minimum framework to hit. So yeah, I was gonna kind of roll up the changes Serial made at the end of last year and a couple other bug fixes and cut 1.6 at the end of this week, tomorrow, and then just make sure it passes all of our tests. And I've done the release for all the previous releases. Maybe I could teach John how to do this next one. We do have it documented pretty well, and yeah, if we want to move Cas Operator over to Cassandra, I think it would be good to like, this came out me and Chris talking, is like just kind of the first thing to do about that is like when we're doing this move is like make sure the automation doesn't break, but probably also gets a lot better and more open. We run a lot of integration tests, but they're on a Jenkins, it's not public. So kind of tackling stuff like that. But yeah, kind of just making the project more predictable. I think that'll build a lot more usage and interest. Like if we release 6 times a year, which I think is doable without anyone going overboard. And if we can get more folks developing, like we could go back to every month like we did the first 4 months, but probably more sustainable to target every other month.
Do you have a list of the features that we've gotten bundled in? And thanks, big hat tip to Cyril on those contributions.
I don't offhand, but yeah, Cyril could probably enumerate his couple things better, but added better support for basically like a way to accept like plug-inable like volume templates. So like we already have a pod template, but now you need like volume templates to go with it, and he did all that, and it's great. And I think kind of shook out a bug or two while he was doing that, and then there was one more thing that while I was trying to explain that one, now it's lost my train of thought.
Labels.
Yes, the label, yeah, the sort of more generic way to point
Oh,
where
awesome.
the point where your infrastructure goes. Yeah, that was on your list for a long time, Chris. A couple other bug fixes are in there too. I think there was a significant decommissioning bug fix that we put in the 151 patch release, but obviously that'll still be there in 1.6. So that was kind of another new thing since the last cut. I have to look and see. There's a couple dangling PRs, which is also like these are like a lot of the reason why I delay. Like I'm like, oh well, we have some stuff queued up, but look, there's like 3 things that look like I could merge them soon, and then it's like waiting for those just kind of turns into waiting too long. So I'll poke a couple people today, but probably none of that will go in, and then that's fine. I'll just go in for the next cycle / train departure.
Awesome. So that was, I guess the 1.5.1 was released 21 days ago. Okay, I'm out of date on that. I thought that was like in the past week. COVID time has made things a little weird. My apologies.
Yeah, I told Eric, John was talking about Eric doing some stuff, and I offered to help him test something. And I was like, I need a couple days till I have some free time to help you. And I'm like, oh, I think that was like 2 weeks ago yesterday now. And I did kind of chat with him since, but not good. Yeah.
Oh, and another update on the latest beta 4 support. The management I don't know if all the images ship with the metric collector enabled by default, but there's some breaking changes that the beta 4 don't work with the metric collector don't work with beta 4. Alex Dijanowski had a PR open that Jake had reviewed and I think was merged today, so that we should have updated images with those changes soon. So so that's another wrinkle that's getting ironed out for the beta 4 support. Hopefully very soon.
All right, this is I think the discussion is, I think we're getting into this point where we're starting to, we do this every week, or every time we meet, but it's getting to the place where we feel like enough comfort with where it is to say, yeah, this is a good unified version of an operator. I still get a lot of questions from community members about operators. Less though, I think that people are paying attention to the efforts that are happening right now. But I do want to make sure that we have a point where we tell the community, like, yeah, this is what we're doing, and then move to whatever next phase that is, from a project standpoint. Any idea or read like when we should try to do that, or this is open source, when it's ready?
Well, on our side, we're not ready to say anything because we still believe that Cascop works better.
Yeah.
And it's actually more there's a new release that came last week that fixed the huge backup and restore functionality that was requested by our team, and it still works very well. So I must say I'm not pushing it out as much. I don't make ads on it because I don't want to make too much noise. But
yeah,
on our side, we're really waiting for improvements on the backup and restore because that's very important. But we see everything that is going on the Cassandra scope, and we actually thought that we could do a pull request with putting Cascop in there if you want. That's a joke. Anyway,
Yeah,
But
I don't think there's a time frame. Like I said, this isn't, this isn't a marketing thing. There's no companies that make this. This isn't going to like make or break somebody's company. It's just what's right for the community, and I think this is what we get to decide in our own community of Cassandra Kubernetes. And it could take a long time, and that's fine. I think the important thing is that we message to new people. It's people's coming here and saying, "Hey, I want to use Cassandra Kubernetes. What do I do?" That we start coming up with like, what's that new user problem? Because that's what I talk to a lot of DBAs and SREs that are like, well, I guess I need to do that this year.
Well, you can say if you need backup and restore, use Cascop because it's more production ready. If you just want to spawn up clusters and don't use them in production right now, you can go the Cassandra route. That's something you may say.
No, that's a perfectly appropriate thing to say too. Brings us to, or if there's any other discussion, is there any more discussion on this topic?
Just a quick note on the around backups.
I was going to do a Cassandra update if you want to mix that in, Chris.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, we can do that. That's fine.
Okay, yeah, we do a 2-for-1. So
we just okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was asking, is now the time for the Cassandra update?
That's what I was. That was what I was doing. It's like, oh, you want to talk about that and backups? Let's mix it into a Cassandra update.
Yeah. So specifically on backups, we actually looked at that architecture that was kind of discussed last week about keeping the cluster on, truncating the tables, bringing the SS tables back in, and then just calling the tool refresh. And I know we spent a few cycles talking about that. It's certainly an interesting approach. I am curious, do you turn off your native protocol during that time period or stop? Like, how do you keep writes from hitting the system while you're restoring a backup in that? I call it like the live manner.
We don't.
You know, so if a bunch of queries come in during this process, it's
if we are restoring data, it means we are in a bad situation. So no matter what, we need to, I mean, they're gonna see maybe part of the table at some point, but this is what it is. And I mean, we don't have a way to prevent clients because we can restore only one table. And we don't have any way to prevent clients to access one table and access the rest. So it's complicated, but yeah, we just accepted this limit.
So if you had like a multi-tenant cluster, right, they would
have different, they would have different key spaces,
right,
different data, we think. So we would be restoring only data for one customer and the others wouldn't be affected.
Okay.
But to limit the impact on the QS, what we do is we copy the table, and when it's copied and validated, then we truncate the table. So and then we do the links. So while you're doing the copying, you're still on the old table.
There's only this short time when we truncate and create the hard links, but those are hard links, so it should be really fast. And yeah, during that time, you could potentially see no data at some point.
Okay.
Seems like a multi-mode problem though, because there are conditions where you want to do an online restore, and especially if you're bringing back just a certain, like I was thinking like with time series data, you want to bring back a certain group of SS tables with a certain timestamp. That's a usable use case. That's a use case. So you wouldn't want to turn that off. So is there like flexibility in that option? Like you were saying, like we were restoring the cluster and you're getting a full set of data. Well, I guess that would be an incremental restore. this case?
I mean, if we have to restore the whole cluster, I think we will use another solution, like creating a second cluster with this data and just do it there. But for now, we just restore part of the data, not the full. Or maybe we store one key space and we accept that there is no access on that key space until it's restored. But
Well, you mentioned
be done
truncate.
on the front, at the front level, the front website.
Why would you use truncate in that case?
Because you need to wipe out the existing data to put the restored data in.
That's what I'm talking about. So in the cases where you wouldn't want to do that.
That's very rare that you could successfully do that with SS tables in Cassandra.
What we do, if you want to, we had a request from our team, was like, okay, we want to restore the table of yesterday's data, but not truncate. So they asked a possibility to do a restore to a new table. So table T1 can be restored in T2, for example, and then they can do whatever they want in terms of data manipulation. So that's something we did last week, and that's something that is quite useful. So you need to have the table T2 created but empty in your cluster, and then you ask for T1 to be T2'd or copied in T2, and that's what we would do. But instead of that, we only have full restore on the list of tables or key space, but we don't do incremental restore. We just take it away.
Yeah. So I have run into that situation as well, where, and it's just based on the fact that you do have a completely different control of your data with Cassandra, and especially with SS tables being immutable and time stamped, you could do some interesting things, especially with time series data. But that's why I brought it up, JD. Is
I've seen
it.
I know you can, but
and it's just maybe I'm offering feature
it's
creep
very
here.
special. Yeah, it's a very special case.
Yeah, you can create a PR if you want.
Oh, Cyril did that. Yeah, PRs are accepted. Did you do that?
Always.
Oh, that's great. All right, I guess I have a long weekend. Maybe I will. But you don't want my code, man. I'll learn Go as I go along. How about that? John is like, don't do this. Don't. Ugh. All right, Chris, what else?
No worries. So in the Cassandra space, there have been a flurry of updates. I guess it's been 2 weeks now. John, do you want to cover the high level pieces here?
Sure. I think one of the big things, we have authentication turned on by default, which I think is good. It's disabled out of the box by default, and seeing situations where people trying to migrate clusters for whatever reason to enable authentication authorization, and that can be challenging to do on a live cluster without downtime. And so we don't have a good way yet for configuring authorization out of the box. And that's a lesser concern as long as it's enabled. But so we're creating distinct roles for each of the components that are enabled. So for example, if Reaper is enabled, we create a role for Reaper. And then of course, then you have the super user, and just Cas operator handles a lot of that, most of that for us. And then on a related note, there's a discussion, I think last week with JD came up around JMX. We need a remote JMX enabled for Reaper. And we don't right now, we're just using the JMX authentication. And we just have a PR open to basically duplicate super user credentials for JMX, but JD pointed out the auth proxy for JMX to delegate to Cassandra authentication. That'll come post 1.0 though. Other than that, there's some big changes around the Stargate integration that have landed for, I guess it's more implementation, and for kind of cleaning up the ingress support. And then, like I said, supporting the later support for the later versions of 3.10, and the beta 4 support is in progress. I think those are the big things that come to mind.
Awesome. And it's worth noting, John mentioned 1.0 there. We're looking to have that code complete and ready to ship by the end of February, which is right around the corner. If you want to follow along, there's a milestone in GitHub. The link is in the chat. That goes into all the tickets that are still open, and those that have been closed. It's 28 open, 115 closed, and really excited to see us moving that way. In other news, we've engaged a company to assist with the website for Cassandra, spinning a style pass. Some of it was kind of hastily pulled together, and while it's looks nice, we want to make sure that we're consistent across the entire site experience. So that's receiving an update. We are also working to start a site for the CAS operator that has a lot more documentation focused purely on if you're using the operator versus if you're using Cassandra. So look out for that experience in the coming weeks. I don't have a timeline for when that's getting kicked off, but we'll have more to share there soon.
Great. Any questions on that? Okay, I got one little thing to bring up it's related to what we're doing right now. And today I'm wearing my Data on Kubernetes shirt, community shirt. Data on Kubernetes community is a separate, it's an independent independent effort. The guy that's running it, his name is Bart, and I've been supporting it some. This is just a plug, like if anyone wants to, he's doing like basically it's a meetup every week, and he does this a really cool format around it, which is kind of a Q&A, so you don't have to do like a presentation, but he'll bring you in and you could talk about whatever topic you want. So if there's interest, I can connect you with Bart. In that, there are several companies that are now interested in supporting that a little more formally, and including DataStax, but there's Maya Data's in there, Percona's in there, there's and hopefully more, but making that more formal as part of the Kubernetes community. So we've been talking with the Linux Foundation about having a Data on Kubernetes day at KubeCon. So you know, that'll be really cool because that'll give us a nice venue to do talks and have community style events that you know, and Linux Foundation is really good at, you know, helping organize that kind of stuff. So just some really cool energy that's happening there. I just wanted to tell people about, and also if you want to get involved in that, like presentations and that sort of thing. I think we're at the point where we need to do more of that, you know, like with any open source community, sharing that knowledge, not just, you know, PRs, Cyril, which are good, but you know, this is when we get out and talk about it. And it's been tough with the pandemic. We're really not doing conferences, so I don't know how many of you filled out a CFP, call for papers for a virtual conference, but it just seems wrong. So anyway, I wanted to let everyone know about that.
Speaking of conferences, Patrick and I will both be speaking at Developer Week next week, talking about Cassandra and data on Kubernetes. So if you're interested, check out those sessions.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm really getting more interest in is finding more, you know, finding bigger companies doing bigger things with Cassandra Kubernetes. And the reason I'm looking for those is just because I think that's where a lot of that, you know, some great presentations can come from. And this is what I've done in the Cassandra community for years is, hey, we deployed some really big thing in Cassandra, and we're going to share our information. So if there's others out there that are willing to share, point in my direction, and I'll find a spot for them. This is just community building. And I saw Tom's on here, and I can't wait for Tom's presentation. Oh, did I just drag you into the conversation, Tom?
That's right. At some point. At some point, we may be ready to give such a presentation.
Yeah, I figured. And hopefully you're the one giving it. Yeah. So at this point, I think we're at the end of the agenda, where we just have general Q&A. If there's any open issues around Cassandra, Kubernetes, let's stick with just Cassandra and Kubernetes. We don't know open issues about Cassandra or open issues about Kubernetes. That's a completely different meeting. But yeah, open floor if anyone has an open discussion item. Oh, and I hear crickets.
So I had one thing overall here.
See, I had to say going once, and boom, raise my hand.
So we'll get a release out, but for the next release, I'm curious. For Frank and Cyril, did you all want to try to contribute, or it doesn't even need to like work? It's really just like could you offer a dump of code for the kubectl plugin? Like I think that was like a thing that was like I think everyone agreed on it, and it was just like, okay, yeah, if you guys had something to contribute, it would just like kind of, we just need to do the testing and we sweep it in like pretty quick, or as quick as we can. Like there's no like opposition, or I don't think it's just, one of the easier things. Like backup and restore is a kind of a separate thread. I know that. I'm glad that you can tell us like what's higher priority for sure. But
we can drop some code there as well.
Yeah, like what's easy is a good thread, and then what's really important is another good thread. So I just hadn't heard anything about that in a while.
Well, we can think about the kubectl plugin. In our case, it was using labels that we would put onto pods just to so that the operator could say, "Oh, I need to do a repair on this one, so I'm gonna pop one." So I don't know if we can find some way to do that with the class operator, but I don't know. We can. I think we'll open an issue on that, so we can work on that issue if you want. There's no.
We use labels too. Yeah, we use labels too. Maybe not for the same things, but there are like kind of troubleshooting things where it would be nice to be like,
Yeah, we use label to trigger operations when you use them only to mark the operation as running, I think. So we will have to replace the code that we use to just call the management API or something that would trigger what we expect.
Yeah, for the flows that you all worked out, like, yeah, that's where I'd sort of advise starting to. That's fine. But I thought it was useful, like, there's like troubleshooting flows, right? About like, oh, like we saw a GitHub issue that got resolved recently where someone was like, or actually, I think they keep posting and they're really confused. I'd like to help them, but they're basically just like restarting a VM without like gracefully bringing down Kubernetes, I think. And Docker comes back up and it comes back with its old state. And so like the pod and the labels and everything are out of sync, right? It's just like, what's going on here? And if we had like a shell one-liner that was like, oh, here I can go like straighten out the state for you, and like I'd feel much more comfortable advising people to do things like that if they had a tool to do it. I don't really feel comfortable telling them like kubectl patch anything because they already got themselves in some trouble. Like, what are the chances this just makes things worse? So anyway, just sort of like having that as a tool to like, for certain flows or things, it's like, oh yeah, we can add this to the plugin and like have a recommended way. I know John, maybe Chris as well, like we both thought, I think I spoke to you about this, Cyril, like the sort of create a cluster flow would be just easier if we could just prompt you with a few questions of like, how many nodes do you want one node and you want the ability to go up to 3 later, or like, so, I don't know, just some sort of like more than just like here's YAML and like people don't understand it and they just throw it in and they wonder why they're hitting this problem. And it's like, right, because we didn't prompt you that. I'm trying to remember some of the relevant things that, like, do you want auth on or not? Like whatever I put in the examples is maybe different than the defaults, is maybe different than what you want the defaults to be. So just sort of like having a CLI to iron this out. I mean, yeah, a long time ago before the kubectl plugin suggestion, I was like looking at how Istio does this, and they have the whole Istio CTL, and it's like, I'm like, yeah, I can see the bigger your project gets, the more you're like, no, we just need our own command line tool. Like we've outgrown kubectl, we've outgrown Helm. And it's like, I don't think we're there exactly. So I think the kubectl plugin is a good point. So anyway, just wanted to raise that as like a thing that would I think that would help everyone.
Yeah, I would say if we can flesh out what will be the first actions or options we would like to see and how to name that new command. Yeah, we probably can start, and also some guidance on how we should do it with Cas operator.
Yeah,
then we can start doing something.
Yeah, I just need to start talking, and then my brain like activates a couple minutes later. So like, there's a bunch of issues I've hit supporting, looking at bigger clusters, and it's like, oh, we didn't really code up much to do things rack at a time. That would be really nice. And I think that plugin might be the best place to do that operationally, is sort of like, instead of jamming more config into the CRD, it's like, oh, there's like 2 ways to do everything, like the slowly one node at a time way, and then there's like yeah, I'm okay taking down my whole rack because I have such a big cluster. Like this isn't going to get done efficiently unless I do a whole rack. Or maybe I'm having some sort of problem and like I just need to roll the whole rack because I've already lost availability and I need to get back to 100% availability with this configuration change, right? So a tool to help somebody drive through that would, that'd be like moving mountains with just like firing a couple commands at the shell. So
Well, I think we need to straighten out what we want to do with the, because we went all quite a few ways in this. For us, the kubectl plugin was all about operating at the node level. Everything that was at the cluster level was done in the CRD. And if you want to do things at the node level, then you could use the plugin. That was, and it needs to be simple, because when you give it to our operator, at first they didn't know about the plugin. Then they say, oh, but that's nice. When I want to do something on the node, I can just use it. So it's quite a good feedback anyway. But I can ask them what's the main thing they use, because it's always interesting to code what is actually used by people. I mean, anyway, so I could do that.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other discussion items? All righty then. So next week, 1 hour later. So Frank's kids can eat now. That'll be great. But thanks everyone. I will have the recording posted here in a day or two.
I think you missed a couple of recordings.
YouTube channel if you want to share it. No, they're all on YouTube. I just didn't. Maybe I didn't post them in the Kubernetes room. They should be. I'll double check though. Sometimes I get kind of. Sometimes I've done this before where on YouTube Studio I drag the video over and then I walk away. Then I forget that I uploaded it, and yeah, it's like not doing the commit on your code. You got to do that or it doesn't count. So I'll double check that I'm not missing anything. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would also invite you to, I mean, I would love to see more faces here. So please feel free to invite more folks if you want. I'm going to be trying to do some outreach and get more community members involved here. I really enjoy seeing everyone here, but I want to start seeing if we can get some feedback from our communities about, hey, I'm running Cassandra. Hey, I'm running Kubernetes. Here are things that really suck. Help me out. That's what I think is the best thing to hear about. So great. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time around.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.